Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Raptors Nation Podcast. I am your host, Sean Davis. You're always by my partner, Luca Rosano. Luca, Happy New Year. Happy New Year, all you listeners as well. Luca, how you doing, man?
That's right. Our first pod of 2023. I'm doing well, man. Hope you enjoyed your New Year's Eve and ringing in the new year with Raptors talk as always. And yeah, it's going to be a pivotal stretch for the Raps, man. They began their 2023, though, not on the right note. They lost to the Indiana Pacers, who I got to give you credit. I think you mentioned that Indiana wasn't going to be as bad as a lot of people thought they were going to be. And looking back at it now, I think I had Indiana finishing bottom of the East. Last. And I remember you were saying how you thought it was stupid that people thought they were going to be that bad. Right now, they're looking good, man. And it was a really good game Monday night, and it looked like the Raptors at one point were going to win it when they went on that massive, I think it was like a 13-0 run. But Indiana, they're so good in the fast break. I think they're leading the NBA in that category. They're so good from three. They got so many great playmakers, and they're able to win that game 122-114. So the Raptors now, just for reference, 4.5 games back of the sixth spot, half a game back of that final play-in tournament at the time of this recording.
Yeah, and I'll give myself a half a pat on the back there because I liked Atlanta. I mean, not Atlanta. Geez, that's the take. I liked Indiana a lot coming into this year. I didn't think they'd be this good, but I mean, just first off, hats off to Rick Carlisle. He's gotten this team. He's gotten the most out of a pretty. And right now, like you said, the Raptors are 4.5 back of that sixth spot in the Eastern Conference. But Tyrese Halliburton has been incredible, and he's the biggest reason why. They got a couple. They had a great draft too. I remember mentioning that as well. But yeah, the Pacers are really good. But let's dive. Let's start off with that Pacers game. There's a bunch of narratives coming out of that one. Let's start off the new year with some positivity. Gary, another phenomenal performance. 32 points, 5 boards, 3 assists. Look, we kind of hinted at it in the last pod to close out 2022. We had a great December, just under 18 points per game on actual. You'll never believe this, Luca. Talk about Gary Trent Jr. Really good efficiency. 41% from three, 48% from the field. And he starts off the new year with a 32-point performance on the road to Indiana. Luca, how important is it that a guy like a Gary Trent Jr. is getting his confidence and his groove back after being, temporarily kind of in the doghouse of Nick Nurse, back in the starting lineup, playing really, really, really well? How pivotal Raptors?
Gary Trent Jr. raising his trade stock. In all seriousness, though, it is great to see Gary Trent Jr. play as well as he has. And for the last, I want to say, couple of months, it's been such a roller coaster for him, right? He gets benched. There's a little bit of a rift between him and Nurse because Nurse at the time felt like his defense wasn't up to par. Gary Trent Jr. last couple of games has really looked like the guy who the Raptors thought they traded for, and he has really played well. He single-handedly was the reason why the Raptors won that game against the Suns. He had a huge performance. Obviously, Koloko hit a big-time shot late. I think it was within 2 minutes to really give the Raptors that edge. And then, yeah, I mean, that game against the Pacers, man, like he was terrific. 32 points, and you hit it on the head. I think the most impressive part of this recent stretch of Gary Trent Jr. is his efficiency. And we know when it comes to Gary Trent Jr., he could be hit or miss, and he could just be that guy that can hit 5 and then miss his next 5. But he's really had a nice balanced attack. I like how he had, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, and 40 minutes of play. Very, very efficient game. And he was a big reason why at one point it looked like the Raptors were maybe going to steal one here on the road against Indiana. But yeah, that is definitely a positive to take from all of this. Let's see if Gary Trent Jr. can continue that, because I feel like the Raptors are very tough to beat when Gary Trent Jr. is kind of like that X factor, that guy who's able to hit the three, hit his jump shot with consistency, especially for a Raptors team that we've seen it before. They could be stagnant, especially when it comes to that outside shot. And just looking at the Raptors as a whole, if we're going to keep in the breadth of being positive here, I mean, 4 starters ended this game in double figures. Gary Trent Jr. at 32, Pascal Siakam, what you're always going to get from him. He had another solid stat line, 26, 7, and 7. There's no doubt in anybody's mind he's going to be an all-star. Scotty Barnes, that's another guy who's really played well, a lot better lately. He had 23, 8, and 8. Very solid stat line for Barnes. OG had 17, 8, and 2. And then obviously the odd man out, Fred VanVleet, who we're going to talk about at a greater length later on in the show. 9 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds. He really disappointed. I know a lot of Raptors fans are coming after him of late. And then one final positive note to take from here, Precious Achiuwa returned finally to the rotation after missing quite some time. And he did only have 3 points, 2 assists, but obviously time's going to need to pass by before he gets back into the rhythm of things. It's just great to see Precious out there, especially with the terrible news that came today. And I tweeted about this, about Otto Porter Jr. reportedly not getting any better, not progressing. So it might be a lot more time before we see him. So it's good that at least Precious did not have any setbacks and he's back.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned there, Luca. But let's start off with the first one, and it's going around in Raptors Twitter and Raptors social media. Luca, do the Raptors trade Fred VanVleet? We talked about on the last pod that first off, we said the road trip ending the month is going to be big time. We're about to mention in a second. It might be a homestand that's coming up this week. That starts off this week, a 6-game homestand where I think we'll really find out if the Raptors are for real. But Luca, let's just start off with this question. Should the Raptors trade Fred VanVleet? So I don't know, convince me of either one, because I'm kind of in the middle right now. So try to sway me either way.
I'm kind of in the middle too, because I want to give Fred the benefit of the doubt. I don't even know if he's 100% healthy. How much can we, linger this to the fact that he loaded up so many minutes last season, and Nick Nurse, people are saying, burned him to the ground, not having a true point guard, all of those things. But all in all, I mean, you got to hold Fred VanVleet to some form of accountability here. This is a guy who came into the season as a first-time All-Star. He had a terrific campaign, and he had high expectations. And we said it time and time again, if this Raptors team wanted to make that next step, it wasn't just going to be dependent on Scotty Barnes making that leap, but Gary Trent Jr. and OG Anunoby. It was going to come down to Pascal Siakam playing like an all-star close to a superstar, which he's been doing, and Fred VanVleet, once again, playing like that secondary all-star, and he has not been doing that. And I think that's a large part or a big reason why the Raptors have not had a ton of success, because Fred was supposed to be that secondary all-star on this team. He was supposed to be that guy you can count on, like a Pascal Siakam. And right now you can't count on him. It's like Fred will have one big game and then it'll be cold for the next two. And there's just been such a poor consistency with him. And what's really concerning from VanVleet is a shot. And I mean, this is a guy who typically didn't even create was a guy who was able to get to the basket or manufacture other ways to score. He solely relied on that outside shot for getting his, and he has not come through with that shot with any form of consistency. So it is a big concern right now, Sean, and a lot of Raptors fans are coming for Fred VanVleet, and rightfully so, because like I said, as much as I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, you do have to put some accountability on him, and he's definitely got to take it upon himself, especially if he does want to get paid and land that big contract, that he has to be better. He cannot simply play like this and expect that people are going to be okay with it, or that his team is going to be in a good position to win, because this team needs Fred to be that secondary all-star if they want to make any moves forward going into the season. But in terms of the question, I know I'm kind of avoiding it here. Yeah, I'm pretty much stuck in the middle. I will say this. If the Raptors keep on losing, I think you seriously have to look at potentially moving a Fred. And I think this team will seriously look at all options. And we talk about that homestand. This is going to be make or break for it, Sean. And we talked about it off air. I don't want to sound dramatic, but this is it. You can't keep on hoping that things are going to change and keep pushing it off. The time is now. The Raptors have to start winning. They got to start turning around their season. We talked about January being important. This homestand could determine a whole lot, because if the Raptors can at least go, something respectable, like 4-2, then you're feeling a little bit good about yourself. But if the Raptors are like 3-3 or even worse than that, then I think all players except for Scotty Barnes are going to be all possibilities for the Raptors making some sort of significant changes, possibly at the trade deadline. So, there's a lot that is hanging in the balance right now. And it's going to be interesting to see how these guys come out, especially tomorrow night or whenever this podcast comes out against the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah. See, that didn't help me out too much, Luca.
I'm in the
No, 'cause
middle,
I think,
man. I'm in the middle, man. Just like a lot of Raptors fans right now.
yeah, I think I'm also in the middle because I still feel like to a certain extent, I think obviously hands down, Pascal is the best player, but the Raptors keep like they find a way to like as we mentioned this homestand and the rest of the month, a way to steal some games and start winning. Like Fred is, in my opinion, and you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong on this, Luca. Fred might still be like the heart and soul of this team. So like trading him, especially if you find a way to start. Now, if you like lose, you keep losing, you start to creep out. I don't think it's worth for this team like competing for a 10 seed. Like that's something we kind of mentioned the Pacers, but like that's a goal for the Pacers. Like they were coming into the year like, hey, let's shoot for the play and up. The Raptors, I don't think like your goal, like you're trying to snatch the 10th seed or whatever. At that point, you might as well just embrace the tank or whatever, and get that high draft pick. So I'm in the middle, but I do want to give Fred the benefit of the doubt because I do feel like maybe you just have to trust him. Like, hey, I know this isn't Fred VanVleet. We have at least the past 4 seasons to show this is not what Fred VanVleet is. I know it's rough right now. I know we're losing games right now, but you got to give him some benefit of the doubt, like you were mentioning, Luca, that he's gonna find a way to figure it out. Like now, again, you can't like he's not devoid of blame either because he's shooting his second lowest career. Only worse. The only thing that's worse was his rookie year, and he only shot 3 shot attempts a game. The third worst is the year in Florida, in Tampa, which is so ironic, Luca, because you brought up that season off air, and that is his third worst shooting season from the field. So I'm in agreement with you as well, man. I'm kind of giving the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, you can't like not put blame on him.
And the other thing too is what's the market for Fred VanVleet? I think I've only seen one rumor that Orlando could potentially be interested in him, and that could be and exactly that. Like, yeah, why? Like for the Raptors, I mean, if they do want to blow this thing up and rebuild, Orlando does have a lot of intriguing prospects, and you could get picks and all that. But like, why would Orlando want Fred VanVleet? And like, I don't know how many teams are going to be in the running for a Fred VanVleet if he is indeed open for a trade. Whereas like a guy like OG or Gary Trent Jr., I could see a lot of suitors being interested in those guys.
I mean, if you're giving me like Jalen Suggs or somebody like Anthony, I get like, yeah, like I don't get why Orlando does that. But
this was like something I saw like weeks ago. You know how it is on rumor mill. Articles are written daily, right? Maybe it was just one of those BS articles. Who knows?
Yeah. One of the other guys that you mentioned, Luca, that made his triumphant return. I don't know if triumph is the right word, but he made his return finally against the Indiana Pacers. Only played about 12 minutes. Precious Achiuwa. Luca, he didn't play too much. First game back, he was out. He did not play since November. But Luca, we were the co-conductors of the Precious Achiuwa, fan train. How big time and how important is it for the Raptors that you're getting Precious Achiuwa back? And apparently you would assume that he'd start to ramp his minutes back up. How big time are the Raptors?
I think it's very important. It gives you another solid option from off the bench. It's another big, which this team can desperately need, especially in matchups in which they go up against much larger teams. And Achiuwa, I think the one underrated part of his game is he's got a lot of positive energy and he comes out and brings it almost every single time. Now, sometimes it could work against him when he looks like he's out of control, but a lot of the times he's really feeling it, whether it's on the offensive end, the defensive end. Achiuwa is always going to give it 100%. And I think give him a little bit of time, Precious Achiuwa, he's going to once again show us why that I think he's going to be an integral part of this team's future. And he actually had a couple of string of nice games before he went down. Very unfortunate for his season. But now, I'd like to see how Achiuwa fits into this and how he could be that option from off the bench. As Chris Boucher, I don't know what's going on. Like, he's kind of faded here. He's not been getting minutes, and he's not been really the Chris Boucher of old that was kind of carrying this bench for the last couple of months. So right now, the bench kind of needs that guy. They need a guy who they can hang their hat on and really rally around when the starters do get some rest time, and Precious Achiuwa, a perfect opportunity for him to come in and deliver in that role. So we'll see if he can make the most out of it.
Yeah, it'll be big time, especially getting him back for this stretch of games that we highlighted Luca being so pivotal for the potential outcome of this Raptors season and what they do on the trade market. And you know what? Enough talk about it. We pinheaded the entire show, so let's dive into it, Luca. The Raptors await a very crucial homestand starting tonight at the time of the release tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks, which Giannis at the time of this recording just dropped a career high 55 points on the Washington Wizards. So hopefully Giannis is a little gassed, a little tired, doesn't want to play, doesn't want to travel to Toronto, road trip, stay home in Milwaukee with the wife and kids, don't even travel. But the Raptors start off a big time 6-game homestand featuring again the Milwaukee Bucks. Then they have, I just have my skin. Then it's the Knicks, I believe, right, Luca?
Yeah. Knicks, Blazers, Hornets, Hawks.
Yep.
Before they go back on the road against the Knicks, so that's the 6 games.
Yeah, 6 games, and then like you mentioned, a mini road trip after that against New York, Milwaukee, Minnesota. They come back again for Boston, New York, and then you start that massive West Coast trip that we talked about on the last podcast. But Luca, I mean, crucial is in the little banner here. But first off, how many of these games will the Raptors have to win to kind of feel confident, or at least have a little bit of hope going forward for the rest of the year?
I think they got to at least take 4 of these. I think they can actually win the matchup against the Bucks because it is the second night of a back-to-back for Milwaukee. And like you just said, I didn't even know he scored that many points. Giannis absolutely had a masterpiece. So, I don't think Milwaukee's going to necessarily be at 100% energy or effort for this one. So the Raptors could potentially steal that one. I could see them beating the Knicks because the Knicks are kind of on a downhill spiral. I could see the Raptors... Actually, I can see the Raptors losing to the Blazers. The Raptors should be able to take both against the Hornets. And the Raptors, I see them beating the Hawks. So you know what? I could actually see the Raptors get 5 of these 6, 5 wins out of these possible 6 games. And I know that's being super optimistic, but like the time is now. Like the Raptors at some point are going to have to go on a run. They're going to have to go on a win streak of some sort to catapult them back into this thing. And now's the perfect time to do that. I know you dropped one against the Pacers. Forget about that one. Now is the time to go, I would say 4-2 at worst, 4-2 at worst to get back into this thing. I mean, if the Raptors can't come away with at least 4 wins on the 6-game homestand, it's not looking good. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and again, you play Knicks 3 times in a span of like 2 weeks. You playing the 6th in Toronto, the 16th in New York, and the 22nd. So you play them 3 times in 16 days. Like you got to get 2 out of those 3 against the Knicks. You got to get 2 out of those 3. I know we're looking further ahead, but you got to get 2 out of 3 against the Knicks. And then I talked about this with you off air, Luca. You gotta get the 2 Charlotte games are must wins. Technically every game right now is a must win, but these 2 are like extra must wins because that's against one of the worst teams in the NBA, both at home, right? Yeah. So I think if I'm prioritizing Luca, I think you gotta get New York and Atlanta. I don't care about Portland, and honestly, while I think can sneak Milwaukee, second I have a back-to-back, likely gonna rest some guys. Because that's just type of team they have. I think you have to get those 4. Those are 4 must-win games because, again, Charlotte is not a good basketball team. And the Knicks are one of the teams that if you want to get back in the running in the Eastern Conference, you have to step over them along with the Atlanta Hawks, who are reeling right now, losing 4 straight, 3 out of the last 7. 3 out of the last 10. And just some rumblings come out there about Nate McMillan and Trae Young. So you got to get those 4. The other 2 are extra, but I don't think 5 is crazy. But I wouldn't put any money on it, though, the way the Raptors currently have played. But I don't think it's that crazy.
Yeah, that's a good point about the Knicks and the Hawks. Of course, two teams ahead of the Raptors and the East standing. So, I mean, if you can beat those teams, yeah, you'll definitely be able to make up some ground. So, yeah, at least four. I think we're in agreement on that. I think if you get 4 wins here, you're feeling pretty good going beyond that, as the West Coast trip will be looming at that point. But, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, we're going to know a lot after this homestand of where the Raptors, I think, are going to be and what they're or management's mindset is going to be going into that trade deadline. So yeah, we'll see if they answer the call.
All righty, Luca. Any closing thoughts from you today, man? On the pod, talked about a lot, and the current future of this season's future, what the rest of this year can look like. Yeah. Well, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I said this last show, and I also said this in the YouTube video. I just want to reiterate this point. I think it's very important from the Raptors franchise's perspective that I think regardless of what happens, a change needs to happen and something needs to happen at the trade deadline. I think this team cannot continue to be complacent. This team cannot continue to just stand pat, because that is usually the recipe for mediocrity. And I feel like at the trade deadline, one of two things have to happen. Either the Raptors get aggressive and address the needs on this team that have really held them down, and that is try to get more 3-point shooting, especially now that you know that Otto Porter Jr. is probably not going to be back for a while, and get another true big. Or alternatively, if the wheels completely fall off, it's time to really think about, okay, what's this team ceiling? Is this team honestly a team that can even get to the second round, let alone a conference finals? With the way the season has gone, I thought maybe that was the case, but I don't know anymore. So if management really sees that this team does not have it in them or have the potential to at least get a conference finals, then sometimes groups hit their ceiling and it's time to start over. So that could be another course of action as well. And I'm not on one side or the other just yet, because obviously I'm waiting to see how the rest of these games play out. I will give the Raptors the benefit of the doubt just because of the great season that they had last season. But right now, Sean, let's call it for what it is. The Raptors are one of the most disappointing teams in the NBA. It's been looking like they overachieved last season, and unless they could turn this thing around, those are going to be the narratives that are going to run the course throughout the season. So whether it's at the trade deadline or after the season, I think the Raptors got to get aggressive in one of those two ways. And I mean, we're going to know our answers, because like, even if they don't make a trade at the deadline and they completely fall off, they don't make the playoffs, I think at that point it's pretty obvious. Okay, it's time to start over. Like, this team is not going to get any better. They hit their ceiling. You got to start blowing this thing up. But if the Raptors can miraculously turn this thing around, I don't know, you had a shooter or a big at the deadline, you get aggressive, and they somehow make an improbable Eastern Conference Finals run, then you can kind of keep on working with it. So, yeah, I think one way or another, management has to kind of choose a side here and go with it, because I feel like they've been trying to like play this thing safe for too long, and obviously the results haven't come in.
Um, I was listening to you, give that answer, Luca, and basically, we talk about the Raptors being the most, overachieving last year and being really, really one of the more disappointing teams this season. The Raptors are what a lot of people thought the Grizzlies were going to be this year. It's a one-hit wonder that, had a great year last year, but wasn't going to be able to, now that, you have expectations, wasn't going to be able to, produce with those. There we go. That found my wording. Produce with those expectations. And the Raptors, yeah, they haven't so far. And I guess my closing thought, we touched on it very vaguely last pod. I'm going to do a more in-depth video on it, hopefully by the end of this week. But Nick Nurse needs to change. And what I mean by that is, from the standpoint, I'm personally not like the biggest rotation griper. Part of this because I coach, I know how hard it is in the moment to know, like, crap, let's, work, get some different lineups in there. And also, like, at the same time, about the Fred thing, nobody was really complaining when it was happening. I don't want to hear it now. So, like, it worked back then. Nobody was complaining because it worked. And now that Fred isn't playing well, oh, crap, Nick Nurse ran him to the ground. I don't want to hear it. But offensively, when you watch the Raptors offense, and I'll break it down, I'll do more in-depth video, like I said, hopefully by the end of the week, for sure next week. Every single shot looks so freaking tough. Every single time. Well, unless it's in transition. And that's why I think they really rely on Fred VanVleet, and they need him to play well because outside of Pascal Siakam, they don't have a bunch of tough shot makers. They have Pascal, consistent tough shot makers. Like Gary is a good tough shot maker, but one night 32 and shoot 11 for 20, and then the next 3 straight games he'll go 4 for 20 and he's Ryan Edge. But like when Fred's going, okay, cool. Now we have another tough shot maker, and I don't know. I think Nick has changed the way the offense is ran to get more high quality looks. But also at the same time, to your point about the roster, a lot of them are really tough looks because teams are daring the Raptors to shoot threes. Because outside of Gary recently, and outside of, I guess they still respect Fred because they know he can heat up any time and not like OG, but like even then sometimes like they'll leave OG and kind of, just put more attention on some of these other guys. So Nick Nurse, I think the Raptors have to make a change offensively. Because like that was my biggest. I think I started watching. It might have been the Bulls game one day a couple days ago, and I don't think I got through the first quarter even. I'm just sitting here like, man, every single shot is just so freaking tough. So Nick gotta make a change offensively. Because with this, like you got the Nets, you got KD and Kyrie. Go ahead, like shoot every tough shot you want. But I just don't think the Raptors are getting enough high quality looks right now.
And I mean, not having a guy who could create his own shot, which is something that is really lacking on this team, hurts.
Fred Vanvleet. Fred. Yeah. So, and like you said, man, like OG depends on another guy to create for him. And even like if it's not a spot up catch and shoot, it's a spot up, it's a wild closeout, and he gets an attack off of that. Gary, same way. He can kind of create for himself, but he's inconsistent. Scotty is here and there with creating for himself. So, like right now, you have one guy that can consistently create 20 to 25 points for himself, and that's Pascal. And
yeah, that's literally the only guy. Everybody else kind of relies on, if they're hot or not. Siakam, it's like he could have a poor shooting game, but like he's proven it. He could still put it up, right? Like fill up the stat sheet, and that's what makes all-stars all-stars.
Yes, but Raptors Nation, first off, once again, Happy New Year. And comment down below. We talked about a lot on this pod. What are your thoughts? Should the Raptors trade for Fred Vanvleet? How big time is Preston Achiuwa returning to the lineup? And what's wrong with the Raptors offense? What's wrong with Nick Nurse? He criticized this heavily. Comment down below on the YouTube channel. If you're listening on the podcast platforms, podcast, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, give the Raptors Nation podcast a 5-star rating and review. It's the easiest way to help out the show. Till next time, everybody, stay safe and see ya.